What up? This your boy Cass with Taboo Topics. So, this topic that I want to talk about is very delicate. It's very sensitive. So it's important to me that I'm very respectable of the things that I talk about and the things that I say in this particular topic. Did you know that one in every four women are rape victims as early as the ages of 5, 6, teenage years, and young adulthood? And just as bad as that, did you know that one in every six children are rape victims starting from the same ages, whether it's young girls or young boys? You know, I was watching Don Lemon on Vlad television today, and I must admit, I'm not a very big fan of Don Lemon. Nothing personal or anything like that. It's just that I'm usually not a big fan of his style of content, if that makes sense. Um, but I'm a fan of Vlad. I spent a lot of time watching Vlad and following a lot of his interviews and stories. And as I was scrolling today looking for the next story, I saw Don Lemon on there, and this is before the arrest. As you guys probably heard, he got arrested. Donald Trump pulled a fast one on him, but he's out now. But anyway, I said, let me check it out. Let me see what they're talking about. I don't really know much about him, and you find out that Don Lemon wrote a book. And in this book, he goes in, he tells his life story, he goes back to his childhood, and that's where the story really comes to life, right? So he says that he was a victim of child molestation starting at the age of 6 from the hands of a family friend, a close family friend who actually happened to be a child himself. He was a teenager. And that, um, in sparing the details and going too far into it, because it's sick, um, that young man experimented with Don Lemon in some horrible ways, things that he had no business even being incorporated with as a kid, as a 6 year old kid, And Don explained that, and it's all in his book. Don explained that he says that it went on for some years, and he was afraid to speak up and to tell anyone because most people, even I was watching, like, well, what stopped him from saying something? But he says that the manipulator, the abuser, manipulated him into believing it was his fault, and that somehow that if he said something, it would be backlash on himself. And this is a kid, so I'm like a child doesn't understand that at 6. Now, I'm a firm believer that children are really young adults who just don't have the developed minds that we have. But at the same time, 6 though, it disturbed my spirit. It blew me away. I just couldn't understand it. And then when I looked at the numbers and I saw that 1 in 6 of children are victims, and then I did the math and I said, there's 8 billion people on the planet Earth. So it's not just 1 in 6, it's one in every 6 out of 8 billion. Now, obviously, I'm fudging the numbers. I mean, I know it's not that to that point, but it's still astronomical. And I'm cautious. I'm a cautious person. I have daughters, right? And I'm cautious of my daughters and what they're involved in, who they're around, who they're talking to. But this story taught you that you just never know. I think we all know someone or have spoken with someone at a time or two that has been a victim. Me personally, my mom was a victim. I have a older sister that was a victim on multiple occasions. I have coworkers. Um, I have exes, multiple exes that were victims. Some of them were victims as young children, as early as 7, 8 years old, who have shared personal stories with me. And in those stories, it was family friends, it was siblings, it was a new boyfriend, it was a babysitter, male, female. It was these people that sometimes people let into their homes and they don't think twice because the person comes across as acceptable because of character and they just can't possibly be that person. Well, stories like Dom tells us that that's just not the case. And I want to bring awareness and say, hey, it's if you are not educating your children, your young children, as early as possible, you got to educate them. You got to teach them, mothers, fathers, uncles, aunties. If you're the guardian, if you're the brother or the sister or the grandfather or the grandmother, educate them. And I think, me personally, that means sitting down with them and having a conversation, a respectable conversation for a child. Are you okay? Is there anything out of the ordinary that you don't feel comfortable about? Is there anyone around you that has made you feel uncomfortable, and maybe this is a conversation we should have? Now, in saying that, I believe it's important that, let's say, for example, you're a two-parent household, and I believe that mother and father should be on the same page. Sit down together and have a conversation and say, hey, we should, just for the sake of it, have this conversation. How should we approach it? Let's talk about it. But hey, let's say you're a boyfriend, girlfriend, works the same way. And you're not, I mean, in other words, if you're not in the same house, let's say if you're a single mother, a single father, I think that's still, it's still important. Become a little nosy. You know what I mean? I think it's okay to be a little nosy because we want to know what's going on in a kid's life. You want to know who their friends are, who they're around. Is there a new stranger in the home? Have these conversations. Hey, is there anything that made you feel uncomfortable? Does anybody have you afraid or afraid to speak anything that's inside of you that you're hiding? Any secrets I should know about? And if they don't seem very forthcoming, just follow them and pay attention. Any shifts, any changes. And I don't necessarily mean if they're going through puberty or something like that, because puberty is obviously different. Kids change through puberty, right? So, I mean, I just think some of those things are very important. Now, if I may fast forward a little bit further than that, right? Even if we're talking about, you know, our 18-year-olds, or if we're talking about our 21-year-olds, I think it's important to even educate them before they get to that point or get to that age. Young ladies, if you're at these parties, no one pours you a drink. If you're at the bar, you don't leave your drink. You don't turn away from it. If something feels uncomfortable, it probably is. These are conversations that you got to have with them very young. Now, as uncomfortable men as this might sound for your young men, you got to have the same conversation with them. If something seems uncomfortable, it probably is. No one should be making you drinks. You make your own, or you don't drink at all. If you are in an unfamiliar place and you with a friend, but the friends of the friend doesn't seem, as they should be, they probably not. And I'm just saying, this is a conversation that I think needs to be had, because again, we talk about young boys. There's some sick people out there, some sick ass people out there, and I'm getting to a point in my life now where I'm like, nothing surprises me. And you almost want to be surprised by things because you don't want to believe it's happening. But then when you hear these stories like Don Lemon, it's like, man, this stuff really happening. And Don Lemon explained that this had been going on for a while, and that this teenager that was abusing him somehow convinced him that it was his fault. He's 6. He was 6 years old, Don Lemon, 6. And he somehow manipulated this kid to feeling like it's your fault. It's backlash if you say something. It's our little secret. Keep it to yourself. And he lived with it. It's wrong, man. That's if that were one of my kids and I found out about it, that's another, which leads me to another topic, because we all say what we would do, but I'm going to jail. I'm going to jail. But the other thing about that, I was just saying, obviously, because I've heard these stories too. I've had exes that explain these things to me. They said my dad would have went to jail if I told him, so I didn't tell him. My older brothers would have murdered him, and I would have had to live with that. So they kept it a secret. That's another side to it, because obviously they have a way of they're hurting, but they're wanting to protect their loved ones because they know the outcome. Or the abuser is an abuser on different levels where they're afraid of what that person might do. But let me encourage the victims that are paying attention to this conversation. It's not your fault. You didn't deserve this. You didn't ask for it. Whatever they said to you, whatever they convinced you of, it's not fair and it's not true. I encourage you to love yourself and to realize that it's really not your fault. No one should be taken advantage of, especially a child. No matter what's said or what's done, no one should be taken advantage of. I encourage you to get support, whatever that support system is. If you have anyone in your life that you feel you can trust and have that conversation with, even if that means therapy. I used to didn't believe in therapists. I was one of those people that said, that person don't know me. Yeah, he gonna tell me about my problems. You know what I'm saying? But I realized through some personal situations that sometimes you just need to get it out. And sometimes getting it out means you don't want to feel judged. And that judgment sometimes can feel like it's coming from people you know. But if it's a stranger and there's no connection, then you don't have that same judgment, that same sense of feeling judged because you don't know this person. And sometimes that might help. But my heart goes out to you guys that have suffered, especially since children. No child should go through that. Donald Trump is this Epstein stuff, right? And I came across that today too, and it's just all very disturbing that now it's coming out that himself and some other celebrities were abusing very young girls. And I'm like, man, what could you have possibly seen in these young girls? I just don't get it, and that somehow these young people were recruited, which goes back to a part of the point I was making, parents. Educate your young people, those that trust you, because recruiting can come in different forms and fashion, obviously. That manipulation is such a real thing, and demons are everywhere in different forms and fashion. To the victims that are out there that have suffered through things over time and you feel alone, you kept it a secret, talk to someone if you haven't to help you through it. Sometimes it's a hindrance in life to no fault of your own, though, because you don't know how to get past it, because it's like, why me? But me being a spiritual person, let's say the abuser is no longer present. Let's say that the abuser is nowhere to be found and you're dealing with that. In the book of Revelation, for those of you that are spiritual, in the Bible it says, and the books were open. In other words, judgment took place. And the way I take that is, which is obviously what it says, is God keeps records. He keeps track of our deeds, things we're responsible for, and our irresponsibilities. Judgment is coming for all those. Karma is a very real thing. Life here on this earth is so short. It's so very short, and none of us are promised tomorrow. So trust me that if it seems like that person got away with it, no, there's no way possible, because there's records in heaven, and God is keeping track, and God loves you, and God understands you. It's just that we live in a place where greed and selfishness, it runs rampant. This your boy Cass with Taboo Topics. If you guys have anything to add to this, any ideas, just any parts of it to add to the conversation, leave a comment for me and we'll talk about it. Peace.